Problem is, you have to think as a buyer. Yes, they pay for the past, but they don't buy the past, they buy the future. You have to build the company in such a way it has a bright future. Nothing is nicer than having light down the tunnel and having some exit or liquidity event.
Most founders focus on growth. Why should they start thinking about their exit early? Hello and welcome to another episode of the E-commerce Coffee Break podcast. Most e-commerce founders spend years building their business. They focus on growth, customers, and revenue. But what many don't realize is that the biggest factor behind a successful exit is often decided years before the business ever goes up for sale. The decision you make today can have a major impact on what a buyer is willing to pay tomorrow. So today we're tackling a big question. How do you exit your e-commerce brand at maximum value without leaving money on the table? Joining me is Bawar Ahmad. He is the founder of Ekoma.co. He has spent years buying, growing, and selling e-commerce businesses and had first-hand experience what separates premium exits from disappointing ones. Bawar, great to have you on the show.
Thank you, Klaus. Great to be here.
Most founders focus on growth. Why should they start thinking about their exit early?
If you look at the typical e-commerce owner, what we have noticed is they have a swing of ambition from about 3 to 5 years. Usually after about 3 to 5 years, they tend to either stagnate, so they hit the ceiling on some level, or they start exploring different opportunities or losing passion for the business. So usually what you see is that every e-commerce founder, they have a big optimistic peak in the beginning. They fight, they go, they goes for it. Usually 3 years down the line, that's when new things come on the market. Maybe the grass is greener on the other side. So that's usually when the founder comes with the idea of selling the business, because whatever, they have something new going on, which if you want to sell tomorrow, it's too late. When you want to sell a business, you have to start a year before or 6 months before. Like, you have to think about it as a buyer. You don't want someone who just woke up one day and decide to sell the business. So it's way easier to sell a business, if that's the goal, if you start with the exit in mind. Then you build the company differently than if you would just, have a lifestyle business or build a business differently. So I think as e-commerce founder, it's very important to know what's the end goal. And if it's an exit, to start pretty early on it, because, it could be a great liquidity event or a big miss and a big time waste. And, you don't want to be left with surprises at the end.
Obviously, there's a lot of factors that make a good sale. What's the biggest mistake e-commerce founders make when they are building a business and they hope to sell one day and they don't do the right steps to get it started?
So usually when you look at founders, they have seen the nights, the sweat, the hard work, the stressful nights has gone into a business, and they factor that in to some level into the price, because they want to be compensated to some level for all of the hard work they went through. But the problem is, you have to think as a buyer. Yes, they pay for the past, but they don't buy the past, they buy the future. So you have to build the company in such a way it has a bright future, and not just focus on what you've done in the past. And the more you get stuck in the past, the less buyers eventually get excited for the future. So most people we see mistake is just they focus on the past, how much effort and money they've put in and whatnot, but it's all about the future, really.
Yeah, I think a lot of people can relate to this. I mean, it's blood, sweat, and tears building a business. But you're 100% right. The seller doesn't care. He wants to buy something for the future. Now, I want to find out from you is like, what are buyers are really looking into when they're evaluating a business, a brand?
We have sold 60 companies, so we can say some things to what the psychology of a buyer like. And they tend to look at it in two ways. They look at the opportunity, look at the growth, and they look at the risk. And what people really miss out is the risky side. Like, usually these e-commerce businesses, a lot of what's being done in the business is done by the owner to some level, which is a big risk for a buyer. So if you're the one who's like logging every day to Facebook ads, checking if the campaigns are working, if you have to text every day the creative strategists to make new videos, it's something that buyers, they step over. They don't want a liability. They don't want to buy themselves a second job. They want something that grows. And usually they are financial investors. I think if I answer the question correctly, it's more focused on how can you de-risk the business, move away the risk, which is yourself, which is platform dependency, which is diversification or product diversification. If you have only one winner that's been working for the last 7 months, product have an end of the cycle. it's not very interesting to a buyer. So one side, de-risk the business. Second side, opportunity. Like if you're already making steps to go international, for example, continue with the plan. Even though you're gonna sell, continue with it because new buyer comes in and they see a big opportunity on the new plans. So they can sell the dream. Right? You can sell the dream to them, and you can sell the opportunity, and that tends to, get a buyer over the line and go for it, basically.
Mm-hmm. So you want to start early to work on the business, not in the business, make yourself replaceable, that someone else can take over. It's not buying you, they're buying the business. Now, is revenue still king, or are buyers looking at something else?
EBITDA. It's really about EBITDA, especially in the e-commerce game. Revenue doesn't say much because you have thin and you have thick margins in this type of businesses, and they really want to see how the EBITDA performs. Because revenue can go up, but if EBITDA shrinks, it's usually in the an efficiency in the business. And the buyers, they're smart. They have some sense of financial analysis, and usually they have, and they all mostly look at EBITDA. Of course, revenue is important, shouldn't shrink and go down, but EBITDA is really the leading factor. And EBITDA, for the people who are not really sure, it's basically net profit. Before you have to pay loans back or depreciate some stuff. But basically net profit, that's the holy grail. That's the one and only number that dictates the valuation of a company.
Mm-hmm. Talking about numbers, how important are clean financials, your statements, when it comes to selling?
I'm so happy to say that. Klaus, maybe we have looked at over 9,000 companies to acquire. And what we have seen is probably 8,990 of them didn't have clean financials. We are a buyer who's very experienced. Of course, we kind of go in with the idea that the financials is not clean, so we got to do it ourselves. Our own team comes in, gets all the accesses, all the exports. We do our own financial, accounting, and then make a decision to go forward or not. If it's not like a buyer like us, but a retail buyer, which is the majority of buyers, it's such important to have that clean. What you don't want is to agree on a price based on your financials, and then during diligence, they come forward like, hey, wait a minute, that's not clean, or that's messy, or there was something. It really leads to deals collapsing. You want when you have momentum with a buyer and you have that LOI, you have that intent of the buyer to move forward. Worst thing you can do is lose that, and going over little stuff like what's the revenue line and what's the real net profit and what cost is maybe personal and not. And few tips, start with not doing your personal expenses through the business. I can't stress this as much how annoyingly it is for a buyer to come in, getting the bank statement and seeing groceries, Uber Eats, seeing whatnot on the P&L, and needing to what's business, what's personal, and coming to really separate those out, and start early on this. It really helps to push through a deal.
It's interesting to hear that this is even on a level of business willing to sell that this happens. I mean, a lot of businesses, specifically in the DTC, in the e-commerce market, sometimes they explode, they go viral, they have crazy numbers in a very short time, and the founders are just not prepared for all of that, what's coming towards them. Are there other big flags, red flags, that buyers find during due diligence that they prevent them from buying a business?
Yes, I will tell you what we find regularly as a red flag. So one is not clean financials. It's pain in the ass, and usually just the idea of to redo the whole financials is just a pain in the ass to go through. And usually it also lets you know how the seller is. So is it a structured person or not? And usually, you only work with structured people. So that's one. Second is that they really understate their own work. So they might tell you, look, I just spend an hour a week on the business. I just check in and I give thumbs up, and that's it. And the moment you speak to the team or you speak to the suppliers or whatnot, you actually see they spend more than 10 times as much as they claim they do. So it's a big red flag as well when they understate how much effort they put on the business. Third is they what is with e-commerce? It's very marketing asset based. So you have a lot of dependency on Facebook ads, a lot of dependency on Google Merchant Center, on the platform Shopify. And when you have copyright strikes, when you have disablements, when you have issues on these platforms, most buyers, they might not realize yet because they come with a financial background. But it's a big red flag in general. If you had disablements and issues in marketing platforms, it usually leads to deals collapse or not go through at all. We've seen that a lot. Well, other red flags we've seen is that people just not report specific costs. So in one case, for example, that we were about to buy a business, but they forgot to mention they had about, I don't know, almost $150,000 in affiliate cost, which would drop down the EBITDA from 300 to 150. So they just forgot to mention that later on. And the last one, the big one we also see is tax compliance. A lot of these e-commerce people, nomads, they don't have a great relationship with tax. So they try to find the ways to minimize it. Sometimes they might cross a line that they should have been tax liable but haven't, and that's a big risk. And again, buyers that come from a financial understanding, one of the first things you check is tax compliance. And if you haven't been compliant, if you haven't done your due diligence, or if you haven't got a lawyer paper to back up any claims you're making on not paying or not being VAT liable or something, you should really sort those things out, because buyers will come with those questions, and you better be prepared, or else you might lose the deal.
I think this is very valuable information that you just tell us here, and it shows how complicated it is. As you said, there is a lot of businesses out there ready to sell, and then they figure out their numbers are not right, their reports are not right, their taxes are not right. And then the next step, I reckon, is talking to a buyer is, if you have never sold a business, is not the easiest task. And I think that's where you come in. You help with this whole process. Talk me through the process on what you do, how you help potential buyers to get everything up and ready, and then to find a buyer.
I'll do better. So we're not a broker or a marketplace. We acquire the business ourselves. So we have bought over 65 companies. We've been there, we've done that, we've seen all the issues as a buyer, as a seller, and we feel very comfortable in buying. So we make it very easy for a seller to exit. For example, we just need a P&L to make an offer. And we make an offer within 48 hours, just usually 100% cash offer. And the moment accepted, 7 days due diligence, and then within 7 days we can close the deal. And with a couple of days, the money should hit the bank account. So we saw that a lot of these sellers, they for some reason they come to a point that they want to sell. And usually when someone wants to sell, there is this huge optimism, euphoria of amazing, I'm going to have money in the bank, I'm going to have finally get a liquidity event. So then they say, you know what, let's go to this website to see how much a business is worth. They tick in the variables and they see, wow, I'm worth so much. I did not know that. Not knowing these platforms have to sell you the dream to get you on the platform. So the moment you go on a platform, you list the business, you get a lot of interest, because a lot of people, they're always looking. You get a lot of interest, maybe from 50, 60 people. You might even get like a few offers, but as time goes by, they go cold day by day. You lose out on them. Interest is dying out, and before you know, you're 2-3 months in. Mentally, you already separate yourself from the business. You're not putting effort into it anymore, and the business tends to drop and go down because again, the passion is not there anymore. So that's why a lot of sellers, they feel very happy with us, because you don't have to go through that. You don't have to go through legal. You don't have to go through and whole due diligence. You just come, we make the offer. If you like it, amazing. We shake hands. In 7 days, we close the deal, and we take it from there. We keep you on for maybe 1 month, most are 2. And we shake hands. We ask you for testimonial, and we basically move on from there. So we believe we fill in a gap on that level, that we make it very easy for sellers to sell.
Are there any signs for a founder, for a business owner, that they should consider selling?
They say the best time to sell is when you don't need to sell. So the moment you feel like, okay, now I have to sell, it might be too late. So the moment you might have an itch for something else, you might have what I call shiny thing syndrome. You see something else that's shiny and you want to go after it. It might be worth considering preparing for it. And if you need liquidity, like I'll give an example. We had a woman who had an hair spray lightning spray or whatever it is, and she became pregnant. So she 4 months in the pregnancy, she was more thinking about the child and the cost that's associated with it and whatnot. So she had an idea of, look, maybe if I can sell my business, I can use that to support my other business, but also support my child that's coming on. So when there's a moment for and liquidity, it's a nice moment to do it.
Mm-hmm. Now we're talking about e-commerce, we're talking about D2C brands. Who's your perfect customer or who's your perfect client? Are there specific industries or verticals that you work more with than others?
Yes, I love happily to say that we love all industries as long as it is not season or a hype. So we like the industries that's what we call evergreen, beauty, fashion, home and decor, toys. Whatever's happening, war or not war, people still will, need to buy food for the babies, for example, or buy clothing, or women still want to look beautiful to some level. So we like beauty as well. Homes, people still have them, and couches and stuff. So we love those industries that are kind of evergreen. We look a lot in terms of financials. So a few KPIs, they have to be profitable for at least 12 months. They have to be in existence at least 12 months, ideally 2 to 3 years. They need to at least, let's say, 2 to 300,000 in revenue a year, and up to about 10 million in revenue a year, and that's basically a sweet point. So anywhere between those, we're happy to take a peek, take a look, and give an offer out. One thing maybe also worth mentioning, people tend to have a very scared feeling of launching a business for sale, because it means that other people will come and look at the business, see everything, learn, and they might have the feeling that someone might copy them, which is also a point that I think we can very easily step in, because we're the only ones. We just acquire. We don't start anything, and we can and it's quite private setting. It's under NDA. It's under a confidential conversation. You can never do anything, and we just either buy or not. We won't participate after. So might be worth mentioning that we keep it also private for sellers.
Yeah, a good point that you made there. I think NDAs is crucial there, just to build trust with each other. Now, I think a lot of our listeners now will have a big question. It's like, okay, I make this number in revenue. How much can I make when I sell? And I think it's a bit of a sketchy question. It's a bit of a difficult question for you to ask, but can you give some indication? Is there some kind of formula that you work by?
Yeah, so there's always the fun question, right? Like, how much is my business worth? We do have a free valuation calculator on our website, so do go check it out. It's fully for free. You don't have to fill in any information. So if you look at it, typical the industry has paid a multiple on the EBITDA. So how much net profit you make last 12 months is really times a multiple. It goes for, we've seen deals for 0.5 multiple, up to about 3 to 4 multiple. The truth is, it's really depending on how unique and valuable the business is. Again, it's about the future. So if you have been making 5 years the same amount of profit every year, you're worth less than a business that is likely to double every year moving forward. So in theory, it's really about what do you expect for the next years, and how do you discount that to today's cash flow, and they call it discounted cash flow, and that leads to a multiple. But you can consider, if it's a typical normal brand, they've been in existence for a couple of years, they have very stable profit, they have something unique to the business, it might be closer up to 2 times the yearly profit. So if you're making 100,000 a year, that's a $200,000 payout over there. If it is declining, it's usually less than 1. And if it is exponentially growing, you can think 3 to 4x.
Mm-hmm. Now, you said that you make the offer relatively quickly, at the start as quickly, but obviously there's a lot of paperwork and legal stuff involved. How long does the whole process take from getting it over to your side?
I'm very proud to say, because this has been a big point improvement for us for the last few years. From the moment someone accepts the offer, we aim to close it within 10 days, to have within 10 days the money in the bank. Simple, as clean as that. So to give an idea of how a typical process looks like, you have your first financials ready, or else we have no idea what the business is. A buyer like us, they look at the financials and they make an offer. If that's okay, if that's happy, great, you accept it, and then due diligence start. And in a normal scenario, due diligence sometimes takes up to 60 days. We do it in 7 days. So we have everything ready. we've done hundreds of due diligences, so we know what to look for and what not to look for. So within 7 days, we have finished our due diligence, and we know if there are any red flags or any skeletons in the closet. If so, then we discuss those. If not, we say, great, here's the contract. It's very friendly. Both sides are protected. We send the contract. Once it's signed, we send the money to an escrow account. So it's safely funded an escrow account. And then we do the handover, and then escrow releases the funds to you. We shake hands, we celebrate, we toast a drink on it, and transaction begins. And usually after about a month, we don't need the owner anymore, and we move on from there.
Mm-hmm. Now, if you do a due diligence and it turns out that you don't want to buy the business, is there any cost involved for the potential buyer, or what's the process then?
No, well, that's our risk. So once we see stuff that even could have been said before, I guess we take our loss and we shake hands. We always end with shaking hands in some level. We shake hands and we wish best of luck, or we calculate the issues that we saw into the price if it's still worth it, and it might be a discount on the total valuation, or we just pull out and there's no cost involved other than the time that has been spent from the owner. Yeah.
Okay. So if you're not selling, at least you have learned a lesson on how you can improve your business. So it's a win-win situation anyway for the buyer. Bawar, before our coffee break comes to an end today, is there anything you want to share with our listeners that we haven't covered yet?
So I know how it is to have an e-commerce brand. We had our first one almost 7-8 years ago. I know how joyful it can be, but also how stressful it can be. And I'm just saying is when the stressful moment comes, nothing is nicer than having light down the tunnel and having some exit or liquidity event. And that's what we're here for. That's why we saw a gap in the market. If whoever comes to the point that, it's time to sell, we'd love to be the first one to think of, to at least consider, or if not, we're happy to give some free advice and tips and just help sellers get through that phase. I know how mentally straining it can be, and I'm here to solve that to some degree.
Okay, that's a great offer. Where can people go and find out more about you guys?
Just go to our website, ekoma.co. That's ecom with MA at the end. Feel free to go to the website, our social media. We have our own YouTube channel, so do free take a look.
Okay, I will put the link in the show notes as always, and you're just one click away. Bawar, thanks so much for giving us an overview on how you can sell your business very easy, very fast, very straightforward. And I hope a lot of people will reach out to you and hopefully make a good deal.
Thank you, Klaus. Happy to be on.
Thanks so much.